Hey guys, welcome back to the second part of Pee Wee motherfucking Gaskins.
That's right, the crimes of Pee Wee Gaskins. We delved into the early part of Pee Wee's life.
He had a colorful life.
We got into some of the murders.
And he killed people.
The coastal kills, as he called them.
Yeah, pretty exciting stuff for me.
Yeah, it's an interesting case.
Yeah, it really is. I'm surprised that more people don't talk, it's not more widely talked about. You hear about it here or there, but like I said, I've never gotten the details, honestly.
Yeah, I'm surprised, as you mentioned, that it's not a bigger case, or that his name isn't more, synonymous with the Gacy's, the Bundy,
You think because it was Pee Wee?
Maybe.
It doesn't really strike fear in the heart of people?
Maybe it's the location, South Carolina.
Yeah, I know.
I'm not really sure.
They're ignoring us, y'all.
The South will rise again?
Well, yeah, not like that, though. Because that wasn't right.
Well, no, I just mean with the murder. Okay, enough of that. So we left off with the part of the story where a senator's daughter went missing and was murdered. A guy was arrested on the murder, but later Pee Wee would say that he killed the girl, but it was never proven. The victim was 13-year-old Margaret Peg Coutinho, and she's the daughter of Senator James Coutinho Jr. Another man was arrested and convicted. Law enforcement couldn't prove that Gaskins was involved, but a little research into the claim shows that Gaskin was, in fact, working in the neighborhood where Peg was taken. She had walked by a house where Gaskins was doing a roofing job on her way to and from school. So that has been proven.
And he's a functional predator. He's proven that, so...
He rented a cabin. Now, this is according to Pee Wee. He rented a cabin in Charleston. He drove to Sumter, found Peggy, the senator's daughter. I guess she had at some point sassed him, as he described it, while he was working on this roof in the neighborhood. He killed her, left her body in the road to be found.
Okay.
Her body wasn't hidden away. But he set himself up with this alibi so he wouldn't be a suspect, according to Pee Wee. That's why he took the steps to rent the cabin. I'm going to be in Charleston at this time.
Okay.
To throw cops off.
Okay. Well.
Again, not proven, but Pee Wee is claiming he was involved. During this time, he was also driving a hearse around town, which I thought was an interesting detail to mention.
Well, that's pretty awesome.
He had purchased a hearse, and that was his mode of transportation. I mean, it was a little odd, but I guess people were just like, oh, well, that's just Pee Wee. He's such a weirdo, and kind of thought it was, charming.
But it was a utility vehicle for his crazy ass.
I'm dying for a hearse.
Right, but you're never going to...
Pun intended.
You're not going to use it to move dead bodies.
How do you know?
Oh, well, maybe I was assuming that you shouldn't.
You know what they say about assuming, Dylan.
Yeah, assumations.
Right, but I do want a hearse. We've looked into possibly getting one.
Yeah, you can score a really groovy one for pretty cheap, because it turns out...
That's why we want you guys... Join Patreon. Sign up as a patron. Give us your money. Support the podcast and support my mission to purchase a Mountain Murders hearse.
Oh, we could totally... Yeah, okay. I see where we're going with this.
Yeah.
Make a rolling billboard out of it, baby.
Fuck yeah. Okay, so back to the Pee Wee story here. He's driving around this hearse, just generally being kind of a weirdo. He's Pee Wee Gaskins. He then kills a woman, Martha Dix. Now, she's a black bisexual woman whom everyone around town called Clyde because she dressed in men's clothing.
Okay.
She would hang out at Pee Wee's garage because not only is he doing the roofing, but he has a garage because remember, he's a car thief.
Yeah, and he can take a car apart and all that mess.
Exactly. So he has a garage. Martha has been described as brassy or salty, as the kids say.
Okay.
She was always teasing, everyone that was hanging around, kind of carried on with people, would sort of make those brassy, abrasive kind of comments.
Well, back then women acted a certain way, so I'm sure if you did any of that, people would be like, oh, she's sassy or brassy or...
All the other guys who would hang around the garage thought she was pretty funny, but her joting kind of pissed Pee Wee off. He didn't like to be the butt of her jokes. And she definitely knew that he didn't like it, so she would do it more frequently.
Yeah.
Because she knew she was, getting a little sting in, and so when she'd get a reaction out of him, she'd kind of keep on keep it on, you
Yeasting
know?
his ass up. That's what we call yeasting your little ass up.
Martha made a joke about being pregnant with Pee Wee's child. He didn't want anyone thinking that he'd slept with a black woman, so that's when he decided he was going to murder her.
Yeah, see, that's what she doesn't realize. She's fucking with the wrong one because he's crazy as fuck.
This is what is so odd to me, is that Pee Wee was okay with having sex with boys and men. Like, he admitted that as a child, he was raping boys. He's had sex with multiple men in prison. Talks about that pretty openly, but was worried about the racial issues of like, well, I don't want people to know I slept with a black woman.
Well, I guess that just comes with the times back then.
Yeah, I mean, I just thought that was pretty
But that is
strange,
crazy, though.
right? He masterminds this plan to lure Clyde, or Martha, back to this little shack he has with the offer of drugs and alcohol.
That would get me.
Would it? Then he says he took acid from a photographer. It was some kind of chemical that was used in a dark room for developing that the photographer had described as being pretty dangerous. You don't want to mess with this. So he takes this acid and he pours it into a Coca-Cola. Then he had her drink it.
That's evil. Not even knowing what it's going to do to her.
He threw her body into a creek, and it wasn't found until years later. No positive identification was made on the body, but the bones are likely Martha Dick's. Later, Pee Wee would admit that it was her body.
So if you just casually piss him off, he might decide to kill you.
Maybe, if the mood were to take him there, I guess.
Yeah, and I think that's maybe compounded by him being a little guy, you know, having been picked on, maybe be picked on even as a grown man, because he's a pretty small feller.
Right.
And
and maybe, you know, his mental illness, because it seems that he clearly has some mental illness, even though it's not diagnosed.
Well, yeah, but also it could come into that if you belittle him, make him feel belittled. And all the other parts of his personality and the narcissism and I'm sure all the rest of that, then, you know, he has to make that right in his own little twisted mind. And the best way to do that is just kill you.
Yeah, it seems like that could have been like a learned behavior from his time in reform school and in prison.
Yeah.
That survival mode.
Or like the set of rules, things you do and don't do to someone, or they have to react.
This is probably one of the worst murders that he admitted to. So let's get into this. In 1973, there was a woman named Doreen Dempsey. She's a 23-year-old. She was divorced, she was pregnant, but she also had a 2-year-old. They had mutual carnival friends with Pee Wee and his fifth wife.
His fifth wife.
So that's kind of how Doreen knew them, was through friends, kind of mutual carny friends. She had been brought over to Pee Wee's house before because she was kind of in a jam, needed a place to stay at some point. So because she had stayed with them before, she assumed when she needed a place to stay again that she could just go to Pee Wee's and they would offer her, you know, a couch to surf for a couple of days.
Right.
Until she could get another place to stay or kind of figure her shit out, you know. Well, Gaskins would later say that her 2-year-old daughter was biracial and that he knew the baby was biracial as well. And he didn't believe in mixing races.
No.
He did not think that was okay. I mean, this was South Carolina after all. Racism was rampant during this time. I mean, let's face it, there's still a lot of racism.
Was it still 60s?
Yeah, well, this would have been 73.
Yeah, but still.
He told her she couldn't stay with him, but offered to take her to a bus station so she could go to a new city, get a fresh start.
One point can I make? You know, they always be like, well, it was the South. The whole country was fucking racist.
Well, that's true.
I mean, you know, you'll see some other stories about in New York, and you know, they uncovered these mass graves, and you know, all the stuff in Manhattan, and you know, the whole country was fucking racist.
Right, but you're not driving around New York City right now seeing Confederate flags everywhere.
No.
But just across the border in South Carolina, off of Highway 25, there's a whole Dixie shop where they sell nothing but Confederate flags.
Well, that's because it does not represent their heritage, honey.
Because I'm just saying that...
I know it's a whole... But I'm just saying, you couldn't go up north and live like a, be treated like a complete human being, is all I'm saying.
I get that.
But yeah, they were all assholes.
Are you done?
Yeah.
Okay. He promises Doreen, he's going to take her to this bus station, maybe give her a little cash. She can go to a new city, get a fresh start, get a new lease on life. He took Doreen instead to a wooded area where he raped and killed her. He then raped and killed her 2-year-old daughter.
Jesus.
He buried them in the woods, but not before allegedly cutting off and eating part of Doreen's leg. Now remember, he claimed he participated in some cannibalism. And so this is one of the cases where he's saying, hey, I ate part of this chick's leg.
But I don't want nobody thinking I had sex with that black lady. That's where I draw the line.
Doreen was found 2 years later, buried about 2 feet deep in a wooded area near his house. Because the wooded area where he buried her was close proximity. I think he actually owned this big chunk of land where she was buried. And the child was found stuffed down in a tree stump on the property. I
just don't know how you do that.
Next, he killed a couple who lived in Charleston. Johnny Sellers and Jessie Judy. Oh, that's a name. The pair owed Gaskins some money because he had paid for Sellers' bail at some point. Sellers was in jail. Now, they were folks, I guess he knew through the business of, the burglary business, because Gaskins was stealing cars, he was breaking into houses, fencing these items. So he kind of knew this couple because they were burglars. And
part of the network.
They were kind of doing that same type of thing. They were going to split some money from a stolen boat that they had planned to sell. But Sellers couldn't get enough money to pay Gaskins back. The boat deal, I guess, kind of fell through. The details there are a little sketchy. Gaskins is pretty pissed off. He wants his money. He lures the man into the woods and shoots him. Then he returns for Judy, and he killed her too. Now, later Gaskins would say that murdering Jessie Judy was one of his regrets. He had been sexually intimate with her at some point. And he said he rationalized the killing because he knew she'd flip out when she learned that he had killed Sellers. So he felt like he had to kill her.
But he was sentimental about it.
He buried these two in what would become Pee Wee's private graveyard on his property. Also, I believe, where Doreen Dempsey and her daughter were buried. There was some rumor that Jessie Judy's husband had hired Pee Wee to kill the couple.
Okay.
But that was never officially proven or established. And the theory is that, it's more likely that Pee Wee just killed this guy because he owed him money.
So he's just killing people left and right.
The same year, he claims he killed 2 carnival workers, 2 women named Linda and Jeanette, near the Isle of Palms in South Carolina. He claims he shot them both in the head, but that was only after he found out they liked to date black men.
Ah.
No bodies were ever found, and investigators would debate whether to count these murders or if it was yet another fabrication or, Pee Wee just spinning a yarn.
Now, could you imagine being these investigators back then? And, one thing would be some horrible shit he described is, oh, God, we found the baby in a tree stump, and so he really did that. And then he tells this other story, and there's no way to tell if it's true or not, corroborate the evidence, the fact it's true or not. But so yeah, I bet that was a harrowing experience for these investigators back then.
In 1975, he killed 3 people who were broken down on the side of the highway. This was the first time he included another person in his murder. He called a guy named Walter Neely, who was an ex-con that he had known, I guess, from his time in prison. It's kind of a buddy. So he called
a buddy.
Yeah. What? What? What?
Sodomizing butt sex. No.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Is that another dad? Is that a attempt at a vulgar dad joke?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're taking dad jokes up a notch, guys.
Pipe it down over there, homie. Well, okay, so he calls this guy Walter Neely to help him drive the van to the garage because he's like, hey, this is a pretty nice van. Yeah, I've murdered these 3 people, but I'm going to paint this van and resell it.
Okay, Because that's how shit works back then.
Making a little extra cash, I suppose. Walter Neely gets involved, knows about the murders, helps him get this van over. They paint it, they resell it.
It's pretty stupid